In the heat of the summer, it is the great oil debate. We've got two smart guests on our London desk. But first, a presidential tweet. There's been a number of tweets by President Trump on the evil of the OPEC cartel. The OPEC monopoly must remember that gas prices are up. They are doing little to help. If anything, they are driving prices higher as the United States defends many of their members for very little dollars, linking it in, of course, to military defense and some would say offense. This must be a two-way street, reduce pricing now. That from the president. We reduce ourselves to wisdom from our managing editor for energy, commodity, and petroleum tweets, William Kennedy in London. Max Kettner joining from Commerzbank as well. We'll translate this into adult. What in God's name is going on between the president's jawboning, Saudi Arabia, and the cartel?
In some ways, the president's been quite successful. What he has managed to achieve is a change in Saudi oil policy. As recently as the spring, Tom, the Saudis were happy to see oil prices go higher. They said there was no need to change production and that the global economy could cope with higher prices. Then, after Trump started tweeting about OPEC, they changed and they've agreed to put more oil into the market. We had this story last week that the king had promised Trump that if needed, they would put all their spare production into margin. What hasn't happened is it hasn't lowered prices, and I think there are two reasons for that. One, we've had a lot of disruptions elsewhere. The Venezuelan oil industry continues to collapse. We've got fresh turmoil in Libya. They're taking hundreds of thousands of barrels a day out of the market. And the market is becoming concerned that if Saudi Arabia produces all its oil, well, where's the spare capacity? Where's the ability for the system to absorb shocks in the future? And that's giving people a reason to bid up prices.
Let's look at the chart right now. This I'm working on. I'm going to do an inflation-adjusted one. I haven't had it done yet, folks. I was celebrating the 4th, unlike Will Kennedy. And it's a 200-day moving average of Brent crude. And the answer is this is when it was expensive, 11, 12, 13, 14. Will, within year and Javier Blas's view, is that 200-day moving average at $68 a barrel expensive? Is the president right that oil is rich?
He probably isn't, and the main reason is that his other policy, as well as jawboning OPEC, his other policy on oil is to impose very tough sanctions on Iran, and the market has got to deal and adjust to the fact that if he follows through on that and insists that American allies don't buy any Iranian oil, that may be as much as 1.5 million barrels a day coming out of the market later this year. And so he's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to talk the price lower, but at the same time, his stance on Iran gives people every reason to buy.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, the Iranians have been jumping in. Good morning to you, Will. They've been jumping in on this. The Iranian OPEC governor saying your tweets, this is a message from him to the presidents of the US, your tweets have driven the prices up by at least $10 a barrel. Please stop it. Otherwise, it will go even higher. They're pretty clear on who they blame. Yeah,
and I'm sure that will certainly work, Hannah. I mean, yes, that's right. It's a big problem for Iran. Iran is in a very weak position here. You know, these sanctions, if they've followed through on, will hurt Iran. Iran's exports will fall, and economically, that would be a huge shift of money from Iran towards Saudi Arabia, who are going to end up in a position where they're producing a lot more oil and at prices that seem pretty set around the $80 a barrel mark.
Max, do you think the issues with supply that Will has laid out, Venezuela and other places, do they continue to hold up prices, or do we get opening of the taps in Saudi Arabia as per the tweets of President Trump and prices fall from here?
Oh, I think they can. I think tactically probably prices will still remain fairly high where they are right now. But I think there's a couple of things. So first, we're still fairly sceptical on oil prices that they will stay there. So rather go probably around 10 to 15% lower, because actually what you do see right now, we're only talking about OPEC, we're only talking about US oil output. Actually, we're only talking about the supply side. If you think about oil prices in the last 6 months, the only discussion has been about supply. We've never really, no one ever is talking about demand. And actually, we are in an environment where you've seen negative growth surprises, where you see the notion of globally synchronized growth being increasingly questioned. So it looks like actually 2018 might be just a year of normalization and might be just a year like we've had throughout this entire cycle, bar 15 and 16, where we had a little bit of a soft patch. And if that actually materializes, then the demand growth forecasts have actually they have to be revised a little bit lower. And then lower oil prices make a lot more sense. I think maybe one thing with regard to what Tom said is $68 expensive. I think economically, the decisive thing isn't really the level. It's not really the 200-day moving average or the level of the oil price. Economically, purely economically, the decisive thing is year-over-year effects, because that's what influences inflation expectations. Okay. That's what influences headline inflation.